You are listening to the Night and Day podcast, featuring the interview archives of Western New York music writer Thom Jennings. Thom has interviewed some of the biggest names in music and entertainment, and now you can enjoy these never-before-heard interviews. Here's your host, Thom Jennings.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Night and Day. It's been a little while since we posted a new one, but I thought this might be of interest to people that are fans of Robin Trower. Robin was coming through the area for a show in Buffalo at a venue called Babeville. So the publicist reached out to me, one that I've worked with on a number of occasions, and we set up this interview. It's a short and sweet one, so fans of Robin will probably not hear anything real earth-shattering or new that they haven't heard before, but nonetheless, they'll find it very enjoyable, and it definitely gives you a taste of the kind of person that Robin Trower is. For a guy with the amount of talent of Robin Trower, it's pretty incredible how humble he is and how soft-spoken he is when it comes to his work and his work ethic. So anyhow, you don't want to listen to me talk since it is a quick interview. We'll just get this one rolling. Probably about 10 minutes with guitarist Robin Trower. Okay, that was quick. So, I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. I know you're coming out to Buffalo, and the weather today is pretty awful, so hopefully by the time you get here, it's a little bit warmer.
I hope so, too.
I guess if we could start with maybe just a little bit of a local angle. I mean, you've been performing live in the United States for decades. Any particular memories of Buffalo or the Niagara Falls area that maybe come to mind?
I think I always have a nice audience there. Always very, very warm reception there. Good audience.
And I mean, do you notice the difference when you're touring across the country, like different types of crowds as far as their receptivity to just live music in general or your shows?
Yeah, I think, maybe, I know, again, a lovely reception always down in Texas and on the West Coast, very, very strong. I think it depends how popular you've been, in the past, what kind of audiences you get.
And as I mentioned before, I mean, you've been touring for many, many years. I mean, what keeps you motivated to continue to tour and get out there? I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, I'm a musician, it's what I do, but certainly at this point, I know you could kind of hang it up if you needed to, I would assume.
I think why musicians say that they need to carry on is, I think, because as a musician, you're always trying to improve. You're always looking how good can you get down the road, and playing live is part of the forward motion, of how you're progressing as a player. And I think also I like to play live because I think that feeds into my studio work.
And that leads nicely into my next question, because I think you're one of the few artists from your era that still keeps that balance between studio and live performing. I mean, you've got a new album coming out called Coming Closer to the Day, and I was just listening to an interview where you talked about how, you're feeling a sense of urgency that you really just got to kind of get it in, but it's more about improvement than it is about proving something. Does that make sense?
Well, I think you're always hoping that you're going to get better at what you do, and it only comes in small packages, that improvement, but the older I get, the more I realise, if I'm going to keep improving, I have to work harder at what I'm doing.
The recording process, I mean, with technology as it is today, I assume that's getting a little bit easier, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Recording is as easy as it has ever been. Because it's a lot simpler. I can make tracks in a much shorter time in the studio.
So are you finding, especially as you introduce newer material to audiences, everything, that it's more of a challenge maybe to present it in a live setting? Or, I mean, do you have the tools and everything that you need to still get that big Robin Trower sound in a live setting?
I only pick songs, new songs from the latest albums. If I think one, I think they'll work live, and two, will I really enjoy playing them? So if those two things come together, then it's no harder than the classic stuff.
And again, kind of back to your guitar, a guy who's actually really popular around here is Martin Barr. I mean, he's no longer with Jethro Tull, and he's touring on his own and everything, and I was able to interview him a couple of months ago. Amazing guitarist, as you know. I guess there's at least a somewhat little-known story that he was the inspiration for you switching over to Stratocasters. Yes, that's correct.
Yes, I was on tour. I was in Procol Harum. We were opening up for Jethro Tull, and I just happened to pick up Martin's Strat one day and immediately fell in love with it, and went out the next day and bought one.
I mean, from a practical standpoint, that's kind of a heavy guitar. So, I mean, I know if I play a Strat for any period of time, my back really starts to kill me. Is it something that maybe you've gotten used to, or you do any modifications to the body to maybe make it a little bit lighter but not sacrifice tone in the process?
No, I don't do any modifications. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's just the constantly wearing it, constantly playing. Your body is suited to it.
Do you ever pick up any other guitars, maybe any of the modern ones, just to kind of give it a run? And I mean, I know some people change guitars mid-career. I mean, you're so associated with Strat, I can't necessarily imagine you switching, but I wonder if there's ever been maybe a flirtation with another type of guitar that you even considered using live or in the studio.
No. That's a simple answer to that question. No, I only play Strats, and I only play what's called my signature model, which Fender's custom shop makes for me.
And that, I assume, had to be modified somewhat because, I mean, you're using very thick gauge strings. I think Stevie Ray Vaughan was noted for that as well. And you're tuning it down a half a step. I mean, how did you discover that that's what you needed to do to get that fat tone?
I tuned down a whole step, actually.
Oh, it's a whole step. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's something I sort of toyed with. First went down a half a step, and then when I decided I needed to use quite fat strings on the top two strings just to get a decent tone out of the guitar, I had to go down another half tone because of bending and vibrato.
And I would imagine, I mean, you must have. I used to hear stories of Stevie Ray Vaughan where he'd have to, cut the skin off of the heel of his foot to super glue it to his fingers to be able to handle the strings. But I don't know. I think he might have kept it in standard tuning, and maybe the tension was what caused his fingers to get beat up pretty bad. I mean, do you have any issues with your fingers, or is that another thing that is just such second nature to you now? It doesn't even have an impact.
So the thing is, because of my style of bending and vibratoing so much, I have to play every day to keep the calluses hard. And even a day off on the road, I will still play. So that's been my answer to that problem.
So I mean, those things have got to be hard as a rock, I would imagine at this point.
If I don't play for a couple of days, they soon go. Yeah, so that's the only thing. I'm tied to it. I've got to pick it up every day.
And what is your practice regimen? I mean, are you playing stuff that's in the set? Are you still kind of noodling around like a kid, just trying to find that great solo or that melody or the chord progression or anything?
I play for fun. I mean, it's not like a study or a practice really. I just play to enjoy, the music really, and obviously by playing every day and putting the hours in, it all starts to flow very naturally.
And I also read that, you as far as an inspiration for you early on as a musician, or maybe an album, was the James Brown live album. And I remember one interview said, well, geez, I don't necessarily get that. James Brown's not a guitar player, but I think now that you're a little bit older, and we're both a little bit older, and you look back on that album and you think about how his whole career progressed. I mean, do you see any similarities similarities in terms of longevity and just the desire to continue to put out quality performances right up until the end?
Well, the thing is, yeah, I mean, James Brown Live at the Apollo was a huge influence on practically every musician in the UK, and there's no doubt about that. It was, it was a turning point. And what I take from it, I mean, if you ever listen to James Brown at Live at Apollo, there's quite long hypnotic vamps he gets into where he's free-forming on the vocal. And I just know that the stuff I get into where I'm sort of free-forming to a hypnotic vamp on the guitar is I don't think it came from anywhere else. I think that was the inspiration.
So I guess it's about that.
What was your question?
No, I mean, you did answer it. I mean, I guess, from what I'm gathering, then you're saying it's maybe that moment of, like you said, that connectivity between the artist and the audience, not something that's not necessarily scripted, but just creates that I mean, I love live performances and I love live albums for that very reason, is that there is always that moment in a show where everything seems to be in perfect synergy. Yeah. I mean, if you can achieve that live, even for a moment, is wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways, for every artist, that probably is the drug that they're chasing, and the thing that continues to drive them to want to perform.
I think even more than that with me, it's if I come off feeling I've played well, that's the kick. That's the gas under the pot that keeps it boiling.
I don't know that I necessarily have a sense from, following your career or reading things about you or whatever, is how you feel about where you rank in sort of the eyes of guitar players and everything. I mean, I would consider you at the very top echelon, and I think everybody considers you there as well. I mean, you've hit a point where, I mean, you're considered one of the greatest. Is that something that you ever think about? Is it just secondary, or is it just something that, you think, no, that can't be the case?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the guitar players, for instance, Albert King, who I think, to me, he's the best guitar player I had ever seen when I went to see him. But, I mean, how many people would put him at the top? So I'm not sure of the value of sort of a league. But I don't really give it a lot of thought in terms of my own thing. I mean, I just want to be satisfied and pleased with what I'm doing. That's the driving force, really.
Well, and again, if you look at a guy like Albert King, I mean, like you said, maybe in mainstream terms, Albert King isn't necessarily looked at as this great guitarist per se. But I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan did some work with him as well, and I think anybody that plays knows that Albert King he's the guy, Yeah. And I mean, it's got to be cool. I mean, I would consider you certainly in a class with Albert King and others.
Well, I mean, that's a wonderful, wonderful compliment, isn't it?
well, and well deserved. So obviously, you're very grounded. I mean, I think that's amazing. But I know we don't have a lot of time for the interview. We'll keep it at about 15 minutes, if that's all right. In terms of guitarists, I know we've talked about the guys that came before you, and I mean, is there anybody that you're listening to or have heard that's younger, next generation of guitarists that inspires you, or at least makes you feel that the art form isn't going to be lost to sampling and all this kind of prepackaged pop music?
Well, I mean, I don't say there isn't anybody out there, but I haven't heard it. Most guitar players I hear now, I think it all sounds bits and pieces to me, rather than somebody who's achieving an overall vibe. Yeah. But, I mean, I have to say, I haven't a great deal of who's about at the moment. I don't know. I'm not looking to find any young players that are coming up or anything, because it's been how many 40 years since the people I consider to be the best ever, since nobody's come close.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Beatles too.
I'm talking about Albert King, B.B. King, Jimi Hendrix. These guys are giants, and there's been no one come close. Nor do I think will there.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned all the guys you mentioned were from the U.S. and had such an incredible impact on you guys over in the U.K. I mean, the Hendrixes and the, B.B. King. I mean, they bred the whole Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, yourself, and, a lot of these guys that came out of that era that really took the American blues style and to another level. I mean, Hendrix, of course, was a little bit later on than, Albert and B.B., but certainly that they took the American art form, brought it over to you guys, and you guys seem to really just take it and do it even better than we did in America, which is kind of weird.
I don't think we ever did it as good as it was done in America, I have to say. I don't think there's ever been a UK guitar player that could compare with those guys.
Yeah, I had the chance to see B.B. King before he passed. He was a bit older. I mean, I think he was, well, when I say a bit older, he was in his 60s. But yeah, just an amazing presence to see, and just the way that he got a sound, it was so distinct. But I mean, you're the same way too, in the sense that really when you hear Robin Trower, you know exactly who you're listening to.
Well, I mean, if that is so, it's a wonderful compliment.
Yeah, well, I do. And again, I do appreciate you giving me a few minutes here. And I know it's 1:00 there; it's a little earlier here, so I'm not used to such an early interview. But I appreciate you making the time, and we're looking forward to having you in Buffalo. It's the venue that you're playing at is absolutely gorgeous. It's an old church, and I think you're really going to love it. The sound in the room and everything is wonderful.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to coming.
All right. Well, excellent. Well, maybe I'll get a chance to say hello to you as well. I plan on coming out to the show.
That'd be great. See you then.
All right. Thanks, Robin.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Well, if you made it to the end, thank you so much for joining me. This is your host, of course, Thom Jennings. If you have any comments or questions, you can email me at Thom, Thom, at coroniamediagroup.com. That's CARONIA mediagroup.com. And if you get the chance, please would love a review up on iTunes, or even a subscription on iTunes, anything, just to kind of, for lack of a better term, just encourage me to continue this crazy journey, just so I'll just keep going and putting up some of these interviews. We got some real cool ones. I've got some episodes with many of the members of Yes that I have yet to post, and a couple from the members of Triumph. So if you're a fan of Yes or Triumph, this would definitely be a good podcast to listen to maybe in the future. All right. Well, once again, thanks for listening. This is Thom Jennings, your host, music writer in Western New York, saying thank you so much, and hope you have a chance to spend some good times, some good friends, listening to some great music.